Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Bob, and the name of the channel is Elephants Aplenty. Hey, I've got a message for you today. I wanted to talk today about something that I saw was a problem, and I didn't know how to correct it. How do you tell somebody they're doing something wrong? You know, there's an old saying, you know, you never tell somebody how to do their own job. Um, and you know, it's very, I remember when I was at my old church, my first church, um, somebody, I guess, was sending the pastor notes saying, you know, you got to do this, you got to do that, you know, this was wrong in the sermon, you know, this was wrong. And, well, one day this couple and their children had to leave, and they were moving far, far away. Never see them again, probably. And the pastor at the farewell dinner, he kind of lit into them, mockingly thanking them for all the criticism that they gave them. And you know, to me, these people were the salt of the church, salt of the earth. And I really admired them, and I miss them to this day. My message today is that there's something wrong when I go to church, and you know what, pastors? I love you, pastors. You are so vital. And if you know, my first book I ever read when I became a Christian was, The Light and the Glory by Peter Marshall and David Manuel, and it really wanted me to become a pastor, because I saw the importance of how the pastors led the people in the congregation. Nowadays, you know, pastors are just as important. However, their job description has been limited, you know, because of the agreements the church has made. And that's due to the 501c nonprofit tax exemption. So the pastors really can't be informing their congregation like they should be, you know, and if they're not informing them, you know, who is, you know, the burden falls on the individuals, and they may or may not be well equipped to handle that responsibility. And what happens is, we're sheep. The Bible says we're sheep. You know, we need to be fed. We need to be led. You know, and the church, in my opinion, could be a lot better off if pastors were to throw all caution to the wind and just say what they really want to say, you know, and not have to worry about what the government's gonna do and take away their job, take away their church, take away, fine the church, whatever they do. I don't think I've ever heard them finding it, but the threat, I guess, is always there. But another problem, is the church government itself. You know, so many churches are built around one person, and that has a deleterious effect, in many multitudes of ways. It's unfortunate, but the church needs to have, as the New Testament says, a body of elders. And that's where the power of the church has to be. And there should be a teaching elder who serves as a pastor as well. And there are other elders who can do other responsibilities: financing, administration, worship team, whatever. But we need to have a powerful dynamic before we agree to have these churches. Churches, I think, should be started with this in mind, um, and there needs to be a core, a set of um, leaders, not just one guy, because everybody ends up trying to like this one pastor. You end up talking like him, thinking like him, acting like him, laughing like him, dressing like him, walking like him, telling the same jokes. I mean, we're not a cookie cutter. This big thing about diversity in the secular world, and that's held up to the highest, you know, esteem. And the church is a diverse body. We're all diverse. We all have different gifts. God uses us, in mysterious ways. And God bless him. God bless God for doing that. And it's just, I think we just kind of like limit our thinking of what God can do, and it's all this fear of losing control of the church that forces the pastor's hand to err on the side of caution. And if he's a one-man show, he's in a vulnerable position too. So that's another aspect of his disposition. But then I often see pastors out there preaching above their congregation, and I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but this is what I kind of wanted to talk about is the congregation is here, and the pastor's preaching way over their heads. I mean, you see this a lot in these academic churches. I was a part of one. I ended up joining the church. I think it's the first church I officially joined, but I think I had a membership card in another church too. But I think that's not the greatest idea to have a membership. I didn't like it at the time. But pastors, it seems like they're preaching, the objective is to glorify themselves when there's lofty sermons to reach who? Their peer group, my opinion. They're just trying to be loved by their peer group. That's how I see it. And you got these people in the pews and they don't know what the hell, the poor choice of words, what the heck the pastor's saying. And they're like, and everyone's afraid to say that they didn't understand. I mean, I'm sure you got, some people there who are there, but what about the people who get invited to church that day, right? Mm-hmm. We need to break down the word into simple messages, right? And make sure we lift everyone up so that they can understand the message. I don't mind, this. Well, there was a saying in one of the churches I went that they were proud that they were not anti-intellectual, but you can go way overboard with that. I think, loving God with our mind and introducing ways to do that is great. But when you have a message that, in my opinion, misses 80% of the congregation, that's a problem. Another problem I see is that churches, somebody has to, in the part of the deacons or anybody really, any member, if you will, when talking to other people, even other members in the church, diagnostic tests should be taken all the time so that people, know that they're going to heaven based on what? You know, themselves, their goodness, you know, or what Jesus did, you know. So we have to break that down as ways to do that, right? With the Roman road or evangelism explosion. But we can't take nothing for granted in our churches. I mean, D. James Kennedy, the founder of Evangelism Explosion, married his wife, and she wasn't even saved, if I'm not mistaken, and she got saved afterwards, right? I could be wrong, but at one point she did not know the gospel. And how can that be? She's in the church her whole life. We got all these Christians who are in the church, you know, and then at some point they just tune out this message, and a lot of times it's because the pastor's talking over them, right? And you gotta, you know, bring the hay down so everyone can feed, you know, get it down there. Let the people think that the Bible is theirs, that they can be preachers, you know, that they can be ministers, that they got this glowing message that should resonate throughout their whole life. How in the world are we missing this sometimes? I mean, there's a lot of Christians who are growing up who are not born again. You know, they're going to church and they don't have that spiritual confidence, right? And then they go into that higher education and they take a beating, you know. The youth groups are not preparing these kids either. It's kind of hand in hand here. You know, the youth groups got kids just keeping busy shuffling papers. I don't know what they're doing, but there's so much the kids can be doing, you know, especially nowadays. You know, you could be exposing the deeds of the evil one. You know, I was just looking at something yesterday. Oh, I wish I could remember what it was, but it was a great example for, maybe it'll come to me, for the kids to just sink their teeth into, so they could see. Like it was, you know what it was? It was the cancer research, in the darkness that brought the polio vaccine to America, but as a byproduct, 198 million people were inoculated with the SV40 virus, a monkey virus. This is all from the rhesus monkeys and kidneys. That's how they got the polio vaccine, and you drink it, you know. And you know, you tie this into, you know, what was the most popular song or movie that year, you know, 64, right, was Mary Poppins, and the refrain was, you know, just a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go round. That came from the polio virus, right? And sugar, by the way, is really bad for cancer, you know. So, you know, we have this elaborate I don't know what a charade, you know, going on to cover up the fact. And it's almost like that it's a devil wink, where they're actually admitting that the cancer causes cancer has been added on to the polio virus. They know it. The government said no more of these vaccines, but it still stayed in production. They didn't make any more, but they kept the production going, and they figured they could solve cancer at some other point. But it led directly to a lot of the lung cancers that are out there, the soft tissue cancers that ended up being developed. This is stuff that kids can get into so that they can see the darkness, you know, how it really manifests itself. If you look at the JFK assassination, you know, And they went after Castro with this bioweapon from all the cancer research through. They were trying to solve cancer, resolve, you know, resolve, cure cancer, but they realized they needed to kill Castro. Castro was right after the Cuban Missiles Crisis. He was a major threat to the United States. And so if they figured if they can hit him with the cancer, inject him, he'd die naturally. And that would resolve the problem. So we end up, creating these uh, weapons, bioweapons. And there's some evidence that this ended up becoming AIDS related, and the racist usage of this was it looks like, from what I've read, it's gone into Haiti to try to get rid of those poor people, out of racist ideas. These are stuff the kids need to be aware of. This will wake these kids up. When you start seeing the darkness that's out there, it's the kids. The Bible says expose the deeds of the evil that's out there. Expose that. We're in a dark world. It's not all sugar and spice out there. It's more dark. In fact, the things that are angels of light that come to you are probably a charade. I mean, I think of the nicest people I've met in my life, and there's always an ulterior motive and a charade, and you get to see the evil that and on the end result you understand. But kids are going into this world thinking that everything's on the up and up, but there's so much corruption. The JFK assassination, there was a switch in the power of the government. Now the power now resides in the CIA, the FBI, the big business interests, big oil. These are the Bilderbergs, whatever you want to call the Illuminati. They all have their tentacles around the Congress. Big pharma's paying off every congressman out there, right? I mean, Planned Parenthood just gave $2 million, of taxpayer money, right, to was it the governor of Virginia, I believe, right? And then it was a quid pro quo, totally. I mean, these are things that we need to get our kids into so they can get excited and be leaders in the next generation. Otherwise, they're just kind of like all about me, and just trying to get that, career going and get as much goodies for them for their for their lives, and that's so empty. It's not good for them. It's not good for them. It's just, first of all, it's just not good for them. And they're being fooled into thinking that it is. And you know what happens when they don't get that happiness? They don't realize they're not happy, but then they end up doing other things that they shouldn't be doing. So that's my message today. It's like our pastors have it all. They got like 3 or 4 strikes against them right now. The church government, right, is it should be a body of leaders. They can't preach how they want to preach, right? And it's 4 or 5 generations have evolved since, poor choice of words, 1954, when Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was the orchestrator of JFK's assassination, right? He also stole the 1948 election. And so 54 rolls around, and he's worried, that he's not going to get elected. So he makes a deal with the devil to keep the Christians from talking up politics, and that's how he got reelected. And then he was looking at 24 years of the Kennedys, and he wanted to be president. First thing he said when he was vice president, was that 1 in 4 vice presidents become presidents because the other one, the president dies. So so this man, is somebody that should be studied too. But he silenced the pastors, so you got the church government's a mess. That there's too much power with one person. It should be a body. It should be a flattening of the hierarchy, right? That's what we used to call it. Instead of that, centralized government, the power should be flattened. And the church will be more dynamic and more powerful as a result. Okay, and it'll be built for the long term. So we have those problems that are like an albatross around our neck, but God is sovereign over it all right? And His will is done, even through, what Genesis 50:20, right? What you meant for evil, God meant for good. So God's can turn that. That's like the best Bible principle I can think of. That's Satan. Whatever he dished out, it's all going to end up being for good. It's going to be for God's glory, because God showing that He's above evil. God is good. So, that's my message today. The other thing is with the pastors, they're talking over their congregation. So it's the church government, it's the 501c3 that limits them. And then when they do speak, they're talking over the congregation. They're not bringing the hay down to where the congregation can eat. And as a result, the pastors, I believe, all I care about a lot of these denominations is that their sermon gets read across the globe so that they can get kudos. I hate to say it, but that's the way I feel. I'm just a guy that's just, I just gotta put my 2 cents out there, okay? And that's what I think is what's happening. The pastors really are not trying to, build up the congregation as they should, equip the saints. They can't, basically, but even still, the sermons go way over their heads. And, there's no Q&A after the sermon anymore, right? Or there might be maybe a handful of churches in America that do that. And the the sermon title should be out a week ahead of time, or at least the scripture verses, right? So that everyone can study up on it and have a head start, right? And, there should be dialogue afterwards. That's all I got today. All right. I guess I said a mouthful. Well, I'm going to sign off. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for visiting my channel. Bye.